Hey, Lisa, thanks so much for connecting today. I'm really excited to talk about, this very fun topic that you and I have discussed for
Hmm.
a long time.
Yes.
Um, do you mind if I introduce you and then you can
Sure.
introduce me so we can
Yeah.
all of our people can get to know each
Yeah.
other?
I love that. Yep. Sounds good.
Um, I have known Lisa Salvatore for gosh, Lisa, I know that I it's got to be over. It was before the pandemic when we met,
I
so
think it
it
was
was
2018.
definitely 2018.
Hmm.
And I have gotten to know you and appreciate your work and your style. Lisa is a Taurus through and through, but she's a Gemini rising. And Lisa is a astrologer, just like myself, but she's also a gifted medium and psychic. And so
Thank
thank
you.
you for
Thank you.
being here with us today when we're going to be talking about, how to find people's, psychic gifts in
Yes.
astrology.
Yes. And thank you for suggesting that we do this. This is something we've talked about for so long, and I'm so
Yeah.
excited to do this with you today. Crystal, I look at you as a friend and also like my astrotherapist
We
because
all need an
that's,
astro
yes,
coach, right?
absolutely. That is how I found you. I was actually Googling because it's really hard in this field to connect genuinely with people I find that do the same
Absolutely.
work. And
Yeah.
when you find those gems, it's you want to stay with them because you know
Yeah.
that I feel like we always have each other's back. And
Absolutely.
it's really beautiful. And I know that I can trust you with a lot, and you always help me to validate and bring a new perspective to my experiences. And Crystal doesn't say she's a psychic, but she is. She totally is.
We'll talk more about it as we look through the charts and the markers.
Yes,
And I
absolutely.
think that I think this is so fun for us as astrologers to come together
Yes.
and to we have some cases that we've pulled out, which we're going to
Hmm.
share with everybody.
Hmm.
But I think the question of, do we have our own psychic or intuitive ability is something that a lot of people ask of themselves. And I mean, I think we both know we all have that inside of us, but some of us are activating it differently. So, Lisa, tell me a little bit more about your feel on psychic abilities.
Oh, I love this topic because I always equate this with our voice because we all
Mm,
have a voice, right? Everybody can speak, everybody can sing, but not everybody has the most melodic voice, right? Not everybody can carry a tune like Celine Dion, for example, but yet we all have the ability to use our voice. Psychic ability works pretty much the same way. We all have it naturally, but some of us are going to have it much more enhanced than others, and some of us are going to find it that much more easier to harness it and utilize it and trust it furthermore.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I also think it's about exercising it.
Yes.
Like the more you exercise that ability or really kind of lean into it,
Hmm.
I truly believe that it becomes stronger.
Yes.
So, in thinking about that, as astrologers coming together, talking about significant astrological markings that we
Hmm.
can all look at in our own astrology to see if we have the, what's our potential for the
Right.
psychic ability. Let's talk about three important planets. Let's kind of, because, and this is something you and I discussed before we started recording. Um, I I think we together feel it really. We're going to look at Pluto, we're
Hmm.
going to look at Neptune, and we're going to look at Uranus. I think
Hmm.
that those are three major players that really kind of showcase not only psychic ability, but how you're accessing intuition and channeling and receiving messages from the other side.
Hmm.
Um, do you have any thoughts on just in general about, why we decided to pick those planets?
Well, we could have gone in so many directions, and I think it was a little challenging for us to. You were better about it, picking the way to go, so that we didn't totally swim off into the ethers here, right? But
Which
which
we
we
could have.
easily could, because you're a Pisces and I'm a Pisces moon, so we can completely do that. But the thing is, Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune are the outer planets, of course, but they're also transpersonal. So they vibrate at a much deeper, more spiritual level than the inner planets do. And because they move so slowly, they impact us in a very different way. And so when they're
Yeah.
making aspects to our personal planets or are positioned in certain spaces in the birth chart, they really tell a very rich spiritual story. So I feel that that's likely why we were guided towards the outer planets.
Absolutely. And I want to dive into each one by one if we
Mhm.
can now. And let's talk about them and their archetype, and also let's kind of see them in action with our cases that we
Yes.
have chosen. So let's begin with Pluto.
Mhm.
Now, some people, of course, don't say they say Pluto is not a planet, but you and I, as astrologers, we know how important he is,
Yes.
the planet of death and rebirth,
Mhm.
but also the planet of like he dives into the underworld, and people who are very Plutonian or who have that strong Pluto stamp, they are able to access all things that are on the other side, but also like things that are really kind of hidden deeply that other people might not really see, because Plutonian types like to dig deep. They like to see. But it's
Subterranean.
it's also very connected to, I feel, the other side. Like,
Yes.
especially you as a medium, I think you might really connect with Pluto deeply.
Pluto is, in mythology, is the lord of the underworld, right? So
Right.
he ushers souls into the underworld. And in some forms of mythology, it's hell, because when you're going through heavy Pluto transits, you can feel like you're in hell. Really, it can be
Absolutely.
so painful.
Dark night
And
of the soul.
absolutely, but there's always a rebirth that follows. And you said about Pluto, I just want to backtrack for those that, because I do this all the time, I say things, and for some of our viewers, listeners that might not know what it means to be a Plutonian type, Pluto rules the sign of Scorpio. So if you have strong Scorpio, if you have Pluto in the first house, Pluto on the ascendant, that's what we mean, or Pluto aspecting a lot of your major points or placements. And if that gets lost on you, don't worry about it. I just wanted to backtrack and just to quickly
No,
explain that.
absolutely. This
Yeah,
is a learning. This is for learning
yeah,
purposes.
absolutely. But I refer to Pluto as the garbage man in astrology
Mm,
because he goes really deep under the surface, and he wants to strip away all superficiality and take everything to the curb that isn't working. And he works at such a deeply psychological level that
yeah.
oftentimes
Psychology.
it's so slow. We don't even always know what's happening. We just know we're changing, we're different, and it can feel really painful. But at the end of it, it's like we climb up from the ashes and we're walking beaten and battered, but we have this newfound wisdom for it.
And something else that I really relate to with Pluto, I do a lot of past life regression work. That was
You're
something.
amazing at that, by the way. You've done it for me, and you're one
Thank
of the
you.
only people that can get me in that space to actually allow it to happen.
I love the hypnotic state, and going into that place where you can really tap into your subconscious.
Hmm.
And when we think about Pluto, I do feel he's very connected to our inner subconscious, and like how there's Neptune too, which we'll talk about later, but he really just is a catalyst and a driver for us being able to access things that we don't access every day, that
Yeah.
are really kind of hidden underneath. And Pluto is the natural ruler of the eighth house, which is a very hidden house. It's the house of death and rebirth,
Sex and secrets.
transformation. Right, exactly. All
Yeah.
the things that are hidden kind of beneath the surface. But let's pull up a chart. Let's pull up
Okay.
our first case, and let's kind of see Pluto in action in a very famous psychic.
Okay. I'm sure everyone knows our friend here. Well, he's not our friend, but he is our
Right.
friend in spirit. He's our friend.
We're channeling
And
Lisa. We're
yes,
we're channeling him today. We're
yes,
channeling him.
Edgar Cayce, who was a
And
world
we
famous.
decided we decided to use charts of people who are no longer with us,
Yes.
because it's a really great exploration to be able to talk openly about a chart without any judgment or of us saying. So we wanted to. And again, Edgar Cayce has such a strong history and connection to the psychic realm. He
Hmm.
really kind of was such a pioneer in many ways. So I think he's such a great chart to look at.
Yeah. He was a powerful psychic, also a medium and a channeler, if I remember correctly,
All
right?
three of the
All three. Yeah,
modalities.
he was. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we can just kind of zone right in on his Pluto, right? Because we're talking about Pluto. He has
Yep.
Pluto elevated up here in the 10th house of where this would be his work or his, his public image, his profession, his professional world. And it's really close to a sensitive angle in the chart called the midheaven, which again would show him taking this Plutonian
Route.
vibe, right? And connecting with those that have crossed over, connecting with souls that have departed, and then bringing that information to those that are here in physical. He definitely did that, and I'm sure it was extremely transformational for those that got to experience this, especially given the time period that he was alive, that he was here to do this, right?
Well, and like there's with Pluto being his most elevated planet, there's like an embodiment of kind of taking charge of those dark forces,
Yes.
but using them, I always think of Pluto as the phoenix that rises up out of the
Mm,
ashes.
yeah.
So like seeing his Pluto so elevated, his most elevated planet, like it just makes me feel like he's trying to rise people up out of their pain in some kind of way. And I think
Oh,
that
yeah. I like that perspective.
mediums really do that. Like a lot of times when people are going to see a medium in particular, or anybody in the psychic realm, they're in a dark place. And, a true person with true gifts, I feel, is trying to uplift them, not
Yes.
further, put them down in the dirt.
Right. It's not about the clout or the credibility. It's about passing on the messages and the validations so that they know that their loved one is genuinely sending them energy.
And I think really when anybody is looking at their own chart, and we're kind of zoning in right now on Pluto, but any of those outer planets, Pluto, Neptune, or Uranus,
Hmm.
as an elevated planet, like they're definitely it needs some discovery.
Yes.
It needs to be looked at. But
Yes.
look at how Pluto is. He not only has Pluto on the midheaven, but he has Uranus right on his ascendant.
I was struggling not to bring up Uranus yet since we didn't go there, but as I'm looking at his
So we
chart,
have
I'm
to.
saying we
We
have
have to.
Neptune, we have Uranus, we've got everything activated here as far as the outer planets go. I mean, really strong, I should say. But yeah, look at that Uranus in the 12th house, the house of the unconscious and the psychic world, so close to the ascendant.
Now, if we just kind of take, even though we're focusing on, Pluto right now, like I do want to kind of mention he's got a lot of Pisces, which is the natural ruler
Neptune
of the 12th house.
and ruled by Neptune,
Right. And,
right?
there's a lot of research that has been done to say that the water signs,
Hmm.
Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio, they have the strongest intuitive abilities. And that's not to say that other signs don't have it, but there's the water kind of like the water carries it, maybe carries the
Hmm.
message, or it feels it too. Like I think that there's something about the feeling energy, which is very much connected to the moon.
Hmm.
And in Edgar's chart, the moon is touching Neptune. I mean, it's a
Hmm.
little bit wide though, actually. If you,
Hmm.
you want to be
Technical, yeah.
what orb do you use, Lisa, when you think about the moon touching, another planet?
I use 8 when it's the sun or the moon.
Okay. You don't
Yeah.
go with the 10. You go with 8.
With Saturn, I go with 10. I've always gone with 10 with Saturn and then 8 with everything else.
Okay.
But
And
sometimes that's not true. Sometimes I will stretch it depending on what else is going on in the chart.
you know what? Like, what I like to do is I like to observe like how it's operating with a person, like seeing like when it's being triggered by the moving planets, like how is that combination, like are you feeling it, like even though technically it's a little bit wide for Edgar, like I still feel pretty strongly about his moon and Neptune
Yeah,
being
I would
rather
count that.
close.
I would count that.
Yeah, I really
Absolutely.
the other thing that's interesting about Edgar is that with anything with communicating, whatever you're seeing or feeling or hearing, you have to be able to tie Mercury into it.
Yep.
And his Mercury is working really nicely with his moon. So like he's like able to intuit the feelings.
Yes. And I might be a little biased, but I genuinely find Taurus and Pisces energy together it creates this extreme spiritual bend or artistic
Mm.
bend to whatever you're using it for. whether that's to write music, to draw, to paint, to do psychic readings. I just feel like it gives it like a little bit of a, I don't know, they harmonize so well together.
Well, they do. They're in
Yeah.
sextile.
Yeah, exactly.
And I totally agree with you because Pisces being so mutable needs the structure and the kind of roots that
Yes.
Taurus gives. And Taurus is ruled by Venus, and it's very sensual and very visual and very connected to the arts, and it appreciates everything that Pisces does, but it gives more structure and solidness to it, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing I love about it is that because Taurus is earth, right? And it's the physical body and the physical senses, where Pisces is more about the undercurrents and the intuition. Together, it can just bring in so much more feeling because you're feeling it physically as well as, intuitively and emotionally, right? So it just kind of gives
Yeah,
it, yeah, that extra bend
definitely. One other thing I want to mention about Edgar is that his son is in the eighth house.
in Pisces.
So
Hmm.
I really like, I notice that a lot with people, like, let's say, doesn't matter what sign your sun is, but looking at the house that it's in the eighth house, the 12th house, to me are, two of the most intuitive houses. When
Yes.
I see a lot of planets in those houses, it really kind of sparks my interest into the person's abilities because
Yes.
it's like it's naturally there. It's been with them since birth.
Yes. And they've carried it in with them from the last lifetime. 8 and 12, I find, right? Especially 12.
Yeah, for sure. Like
Yeah.
that's, I always think of the 12 as like things that you're carrying over from the other
Yeah.
side.
But let's be
Um,
real. These placements are not easy. Let's right, like we have to give it its credit, right? The eighth and the 12th and even the fourth. The water houses carry a lot of depth and emotion, right? And what we're constantly working through in this lifetime.
well, I think the best therapists or people who work with others, whether it be mediumship or psychic
Hmm.
or astrology, like, everybody's coming in with their own story, but usually the best people have had a struggle,
Yes.
like there's some, and even when we look at Edgar's chart, just to have like his chart is not easy. I mean,
No.
got,
Nope.
he's got a lot of um he's got a lot of struggle there
Yeah.
that is, I'm sure that if he were here with us, he would, he had to kind of travel through the dark himself in order to find the light.
Right. Absolutely.
um do you want to at least spend, the whole day or year talking about Edgar? Do you want to move on to, let's talk about Neptune next?
Yes. Okay. Let's go to Neptune.
And let's just kind of, and again, so we're talking about Pluto, the planet of the underworld. Neptune is very different, right? Neptune is not as stable. I say that with love.
Right.
It is the ruler of the sea. And so when you think about, the ocean, it's always the waves up, down, and all around.
Yes.
But it also has the ability to transcend, right? Neptune can be a great channeler. Um, it's wonderful with bringing us into hypnotic states. It's wonderful for being able to open up the third eye, but it's also, there's a delusion and an illusion that comes with it. And I think a lot of times with people with their abilities, like, you wonder, is this crazy or is it real?
Yes. That's very
And you
true.
need, as you going through um learning or, kind of getting validation for what you're seeing when you're talking to somebody, like,
Yes.
sometimes you wonder, like, I even say that sometimes to my clients. I'm like, this may sound crazy, but let me just say what I'm thinking. But I think that's very Neptunian, like, because
Yes.
there is that on the edge. What are your thoughts on that?
I have so many thoughts on Neptune. So as you know, I'm going to just share
Very
my own
Neptunian.
experience. I'm very Neptunian because I have a pretty powerful 12th house and I also have a Pisces moon. So I'm very Neptunian and I can describe it best like this. It's like I came into this lifetime with this innate understanding of energy. And as a child, you know it's there and you're sitting there thinking you're weird because you can't For me, claircognizance was like always my strongest as a child, where I just kind of knew things that went beyond logic that I shouldn't know, but I knew them, and I couldn't explain how I knew them, but I knew them. So
Yeah.
that was very strange growing up. And now I look at it as, oh my gosh, it's opened up my life in tremendous ways and connected me with amazing people, beautiful souls. But I've learned you have to flow with Neptune, but you can't let Neptune take you out to sea because it's very easy. And I've had that experience as well. Personally speaking, wherever Neptune falls in your chart, you have the potential to be deceived, but you could be the one who's deceiving yourself. That's the trick with Neptune. So Neptune's
So
tricky.
true.
Neptune's nebulous. It's not easy, but it is beautiful. It's a higher octave of Venus. It's all about unconditional love and divinity. So there's a beautiful side to it as well. So, but we
It
have
really
to,
is.
yeah, we have to give the shadow side too, because there is quite the shadow side with Neptune.
And it's so it is whenever I think about him, he is that illusion,
Hmm.
like there is that illusion that you have to kind of grapple with and
Yes.
make it, you have to make it real. And I think that people with gifts, again, we all have our gifts, but people who want to exercise their gifts, I always tell my students, like, you should have somebody that you can trust to talk about what you're seeing so
Yes.
they can validate, is this real or not? And
Hmm.
the sharper you get with being able to validate your own intuition, I think it gets stronger.
Oh, and what you just said sparked me to bring this up. Connected to the planet Neptune, a lot of people that are strongly Neptunian, they see auras. They do see color. And in fact, as a child, I would see that as well. You see color because Neptune. Neptune is Pisces, and that is
Yes.
one of the signs that's most strongly connect to artistry and color. So a lot of people with strong Neptune, their abilities they'll see. It's about seeing, and sometimes it's like you're seeing almost like a hologram, or you're seeing color, or you're seeing auras. And again, those abilities will transcend, keyword for Neptune, over time.
And that, again, like the visual piece is, whenever I'm very Piscean
I was just gonna
myself,
say
like
you're so artistic. Like you make beautiful
I have
books
I have
and
I have almost all of my personal planets in Pisces. My moon, it conjuncts Neptune, so
yeah, there you
there's a
go.
lot of there's a lot of Neptune going on in my chart. But what I want to add to what you said about the visuals is that, particularly this happens to me when I do hypnosis and past life regressions. When I do this work, like the person is seeing it through in their mind's eye, but like I'm seeing my own version of it.
So
And I
cool.
think that anybody who's able to kind of channel or message or kind of communicate, like the visual piece is really important.
Yes.
Let's bring up our next chart, because
Okay.
this lady is super special, and she's got a strong Neptunian stamp, and I think a lot of our viewers will probably have
Yes.
know who she is.
Which one? Which was her second? D or E?
We're uh D.
D. Okay, that's what I thought. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
This is one of my personal favorites.
she's awesome.
Okay.
Here's
So we have
Dolores.
Dolores
And if
Cannon.
anybody doesn't know who Dolores Cannon is, you need to Google her right now, because she is a source of inspiration. Her deep work was, I believe it was, it really kind of is rooted in past life regression. Like, she had a
Yes.
strong, but so intuitive
Mhm.
and definitely very psychic. So,
Yes.
Lisa, tell me what you see when you look at this chart.
Well, I mean, the first thing we can't help but notice is Neptune, so
I
prominent right
know.
here in the first house and very close to the ascendant, the angle here of the first house, which is such a sensitive point of the chart. I mean, this is her identity, very Neptune.
And
And
that goes into what we saw with Edgar, because Edgar had Pluto on his midheaven. So
yes,
touching,
yes,
again, when these power planets touch any of the angles,
they become stronger.
um, I feel they're very strong. I gotta say, in my feel, I feel the 10th, the first, the fourth. I really see a lot of strong with the IC. But when it comes to the seventh conjunction over there, that one I feel like it's the three, the midheaven, the ascendant, and then the IC.
Mm,
Um, there's something very strong because the seventh is very relationship oriented, very
Yes.
kind of more inward.
Right. Or what you might experience through others as opposed to like your own personal experience, right?
Yes, great
Yeah.
way to say that.
Yeah.
But you know what else is interesting about Dolores, going back to what we were saying about the elements? Dolores has a lot of fire,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of earth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, her water, though, she's got a Pluto Jupiter conjunction in
Yes.
Cancer. Very intuitive
It's
sign.
very deep.
There,
And
that's like a power kind of combination there.
yeah, and Jupiter's going to always magnify whatever he's aspecting, right? So he's going to magnify and intensify that Pluto energy of being able to, go into the underworld and help people come out of it. That's what she did. So,
And that was such a superpower of hers, such a superpower. And I really feel like that Neptune, so just like you were saying on the ascendant, it was just like it was her embodiment. The way that she presented was, and that happens to all of us whenever we have a planet on our ascendant, like it kind of flavors the front door. It flavors
yes.
like how it takes over a little bit.
Hmm. I think planets in the first house in general, right? But obviously, the closer they are to the ascendant, the more prevalent they're gonna be. But I feel like whenever we have anything in the first house, it's gonna be more visible, right? It's gonna be more
Yeah,
in other people's faces about who we are. Sometimes more to them than it is to us,
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
So,
speaking of which, she has Neptune here, so I'm sure that people projected onto her the image of who they thought she was as opposed to who she actually was, right?
and the other thing that is like her Neptune is not it's not well behaved, let's say.
Mm-mm.
Like it's again going back to what we were saying, like I feel like really strong intuitives, there's always a struggle behind it,
Oh
like
yeah.
there's always a struggle behind. That's how they rise above and are able to pain into power. People who turn pain into power, and Dolores has she did it so beautifully. And I also think that even though like that hypnoticness, like her, because I think when you listen to her and her channelings and her like her voice can be, like you kind of get like enchanted by it because that's like
Hmm.
a Neptunian thing, the enchantment.
Yes. Maybe that's her Mercury in Taurus, right?
Yeah,
The way that
she
she
there's
speaks.
that there. Well, Taurus rules over the voice.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, and one of the beauties of Mercury and Taurus, again, I love Taurus for the rootedness, the groundedness, and it kind of like battles, that part that wants to, float
Hmm.
off into sea.
Yes. Well,
And
let's
her
all,
Mercury is it's really like it's really working well with that power combination of Jupiter and
yeah,
Pluto. Like she had such a strong communicator and a teacher.
very good teacher. I still listen to her and watch her lectures and read her books. I mean, I've never stopped. I just adore her and her teachings, and I just find her so spot on. And I feel like we both practice quite similarly to her in different
Well,
ways.
she's such an icon, but and just thinking about the teacher part of her, that her son is so strong in that ninth house, the
Hmm.
natural house of the teacher. Mercury is there, and then Chiron. So again, like communicating wounds,
Yes.
Chiron, the wounded healer, right?
Yep. I have to
Uh,
also pull in her Uranus, even though we didn't talk about Uranus yet, because it's so powerful in her eighth house. And that's very powerful for channeling. And that's powerful for receiving the higher guidance, those quick intuitive flashes of insight. And in that eighth house, her moon's also here too, by the way. So, she's going to easily be able, and fire is a lot of people, I know you know this, Crystal, obviously, but a lot of people don't really give fire the credit for the intuition that it houses because fire just spreads. It just is. It's quick.
yeah.
So it comes in hot and fast, and if you wait on it, you're not going to get the same message as if you just go with it. I don't think she had any problem going with it, but again,
But that's a great way to say it because it does, like there's evidence of people, through all the elements of having intuitive abilities, but it's
yes.
about how they're using it. And I love that the way that you describe the fire, it spreads because you're so right. And
Yeah.
it's so in her eighth house, which is, kind of taking on that psychic feel, that natural Scorpio house.
Yep. Yeah, so
Now
she's,
that we talked about Uranus,
yeah, let's go do that
let's
now.
kind of let's come back to center and talk about the planet of sudden downloads, right?
Hmm. Yes,
What, let,
Uranus.
let's start with your view on Uranus.
Uranus is a disruptor. and, and
Absolutely.
and sometimes it's the best disruptor, right? Because we need disruption at times to move us forward, right? So it could be chaotic disruption, as in the form of a tornado, for example, that takes down a structure, but you've been looking to buy a new piece of land anyway. I'm just kind of spitballing, but Uranus
Yeah.
will always bring us where we're supposed to be, but it doesn't always do it on our timetable or the way we want it to
Oh,
be.
he's wild
And
and
once
chaotic.
it settles, exactly, once it settles, you realize, okay, this had to happen to bring me here. But I look at Uranus as, gosh, I mean, listen, I'm a Taurus and Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018. And you know, Crystal, my journey with Uranus, it's really been stretching me out of my comfort zone in a huge way. That has not been comfortable, obviously, stretching me out of my comfort zone, but necessary. And looking back, it's just so amazing because you kind of like check in and recognize your own natural brilliance, if that makes sense, like your own intuition and knowing there's a divine order to everything we do. That's Uranus.
Yeah. And he is, I love Uranus. He is my
You
most
do.
elevated.
Yeah.
We both have very strong Uranus in our astrology. Like
Yes.
Uranus is the ruler of astrology. And
Yes.
I think people who are, really, really working with astrology have to have some sort of Uranian uh, part of their makeup.
Yes.
Um, but he's wild and wacky, and he is chaos. He's total chaos. But he's also that quick download
Yes.
that you get that you don't know where it came from, but it comes in. I always think of him as delivering lightning bolts.
Yeah. Well, he is the god of lightning. He's known as the god of lightning, right?
Like it's like it comes in so fast. It doesn't matter what sign he's in, but it comes in so fast, and it's up to you know, the person that receives it to use the information in the way that you want. But um, he's quick. He's quick. He's
Quick.
disruptive. He's usually behind most of the disruptive weather patterns.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I feel like we've been spot on with predictions when it came to Uranus,
He's
unfortunately. But
always he's always I mean, again, just like you said, like he's been a big player.
mhm,
He's been really creating a lot of disruption. I think that there's a lot of disruption in the collective, and I think that he's not going
absolutely.
to stop. He's going to keep on disrupting because he wants change. Like he's a huge change agent, right?
Yes, agent of change. And I always say too with Uranus, like where Mercury rules over our lower mind or our most basic thinking patterns, although Mercury is intuitive within its own right, but Uranus is the higher mind. It's like what we call the God mind, right? So this is where you, like you said, you just get those flashes, you just get those downloads. A lot of times they come in through the dream space and you're like, where did that come from? But it's just so accurate. And I think too with Uranus, it's one of my teachers many years ago, he always used to say, Uranus leaves you better than you're found. And it's something that has
Mm.
always stuck with me because in those moments where I'm going through something where I've had Uranus kind of come in and I'm sitting there saying, what just happened? And I always hear his voice like, don't, Uranus leaves you better than you're found. So I just always tell myself that. You just have to trust it.
Well, you know what? Like in seeing him operate in my chart and my clients' charts, like I do know that you don't you don't want him when he's around,
Mm-mm.
but when he's passed, you're like, you know what? I'm glad he came in and stirred my pot because it's
Yes.
like you did find some gifts
Oh,
through
yeah.
the stir
Through the
or the
rubble, through the
sting,
rubble,
the
through the
rebel,
rubble.
right?
Well, that's if for those that know tarot, the tarot cards, Uranus is the tower that, and
Yeah,
that's the, I'll pop the card up on the screen, but that's where you see the lightning bolts hit the tower and you see the figures just poof, coming right out of the tower. And it just looks like so dark and destructive. But I always say to everyone, the star follows the tower and the star is the
yeah,
healing and the renewal after the chaos. And that's how Uranus operates as well. And it's Uranus rules Aquarius, so
right.
Your Uranian individuals always march to the beat of their own drum. They just
Yeah.
do. They have something eccentric about them.
They can't be in a box,
No,
they
oh, that
can't, they
it's
need
me.
freedom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and it's interesting too with a lot of the polarities we all have in our charts. It's so fascinating because you could be a very, I'll use myself as an example. I'm a Taurus, so I like things a certain way. But when things are a certain way for far too long, something Uranian comes in, or I do it, and it's like, poof, I just blow it up because unconsciously it's like I'm seeking to break free. I can't be boxed in, even though
But
I
that's
like
his MO.
structure.
He needs,
Yeah,
that's his MO. He needs to be able to break free.
stretch
He
us.
doesn't, he can't be in a cage. He can't be in a cage.
Yeah.
Let's
Wow.
bring up our
Yes.
next chart because
Okay.
I love, this is one of my favorite astrologers of all time.
Yeah, I didn't even know
Evangeline,
about her until you told me.
and Lisa, I can't wait for you to read more about her. Evangeline Adams is my girl.
I love
She
that
is,
name. Such a beautiful name, Evangeline.
yeah, she again, for everyone watching this, like, I really encourage you to read more about her. She really was a powerful change agent, and like, she was operating in a time, she was born in the late 1800s, but she was operating like in the, that early 20s, 30s, like in New York City. Her clients were JP Morgan Chase and all those, kind of rich to-dos. She made such great calls, and people really respected her in a time where astrology wasn't that accepted.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a huge feat because that even now it's sometimes challenging with
well, you know
astrology.
what, the thing, it's interesting about where we are right now, because even though, yes, there's always going to be, the naysayers, like, there's so much of our youth and so many people coming in that are really getting more accepting to astrology. So I feel like it's a different time right now.
Yeah.
Like, Lisa, when you and I began, like, there was, like, when I began, I was anonymous. I didn't even put my, picture out
Oh,
there.
I
Like,
know.
I
Yeah.
was very secretive about my work because, of the judgment that
Yes.
went along with, doing this kind of work.
And now you turn a corner and there's like an astrologer everywhere. And I'm sorry, we've talked about this too. It's upsetting because it's like it's pop astrology and they're not giving you real astrology, and it's very frustrating. But
Well, and
I
I think that
digress.
that's the thing is that I think that what everybody should know is that you should, whenever you choose to listen to somebody, you should really kind of you should watch them for a little bit and kind
Yeah.
of resonate with their voice and resonate with the way that, because with astrology, it's about how you communicate the message, right? Like,
Yes.
how, and you say tomato, I say tomato.
Right.
It's like, it's important to kind of resonate with that person, because truly, like, when you go to see an astrologer, like, they really are looking at your soul.
Yes. Yes.
It's like you're seeing it, and you want to be in good hands with that person.
Yes.
You also want to be with somebody who is not just, taking textbook stuff, that's actually worked with people, because that,
Experience.
astrology can play out in so many different ways. Like, an experienced astrologer is going to have they've seen it play out with their clients. They've seen
Yes.
it. They have stories. They're not just using the classic textbook definition. They're actually applying it to real life.
Right. Yeah. And that can only be done with experience, right? You have to go through your own experiences. And also too, when working with an astrologer, you should feel it at the soul level. You should feel seen, heard, supported, understood, with truth to it though. Not, a good astrologer is going to always give you, they're going to mirror back to you your weak points as well. It's not going to all be unicorns and rainbows, right? We're going to show you, we're going to explain to you sometimes your own blind spots, right? Where you don't see where you could be
That's the
contributing to
beauty.
this. Exactly.
And that's why, I mean, I think that it's such a wonderful map to be able to see our strengths and our weaknesses, and it kind of keeps us in check too,
Yeah.
I feel like,
Yes. Yes, and that's why just to digress again, just it's so important for those that are watching just to even dive into your basic astrology. Go online, look at your placements. If you don't want to have or can't have an astrology session, go online, Google your own placements. It's just such an enlightening experience if you're not familiar with it at all.
Totally. And it's enlightening.
Yeah.
But let's look at Evangeline
Yes.
because she deserves our attention, and
Yes.
she is an Aquarius, right? But she's ruled by Pisces,
Mm-hmm.
and Pisces is the sign that works with Neptune. And look at her
She's
heavy 12th
so much
house.
Pisces in that 12th house too.
I mean, it's
Wow.
just it's a, you know, we're seeing a theme with these three cases, right? We see a lot of 12th, we see a lot of 8th,
Mm-hmm.
we see you know, like the house placements are even just as important as the signs that the planets are in.
Yes.
Like it's so key to kind of put all the pieces together.
Mm-hmm.
But
Absolutely. And
Evangeline's Uranus, it's down below, right? It's in the fourth house,
mm,
but it's working beautifully um with her Jupiter. And now her ruler is actually Neptune, but before Neptune was discovered, Jupiter was the ruler of Pisces.
which I still use. I use Jupiter still. I mean, I use both, but yeah. I
I
mean,
like to give both attention, you know, I
exactly.
think, but
Well, look at, sorry.
knowing that she was such a great astrologer, like there's that Uranus in action, like it's working with her, one of her rulers.
Yeah. And also her Neptune, her Pluto, and her Uranus are all connecting in pretty much harmonious ways. They're aspecting each other technically, right? I mean, Pluto is sextiling Uranus,
Right. The
and
sextile.
um, I mean, okay, Uranus squares Neptune, but still, they're still contacting. They're still connecting.
Well, she's really kind of tapping into all of them, you know,
Yeah.
like there's, I mean, just with Neptune being in her first house, it just adds that Piscean flavor to
Yeah.
her. Pluto in
And
the second, you know, it's
and
that
Del
Pluto is also working well with the Pisces planets too. It's
yes.
sextiling it really
Yes.
beautifully.
Yep. Yeah, I've noticed in all three of these charts. Well, Dolores had Neptune in the first, but also there's a lot of there's strong Pisces, there's strong Leo actually, and also Taurus in all these charts.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Leo. Like Leo is, or it's a fire sign, but there's a lot of strength with Leo,
Hmm.
especially in the psychic world. Like I think that I think that the ego part of Leo is sometimes necessary with being able to feel confident about what you're saying and about
Yes.
what you're feeling and what
Yes.
you're you know, like you do need, confidence is key, right? It's
True.
everything.
True.
I feel like that Leo is a big piece of that.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, and the interesting thing too about that her 12th house is 12th house individuals, because everything operates so under the surface that a lot of times it's challenging to allow yourself to be seen, even though you want to be seen. And I would imagine with this 12th house that she has, how challenging it was for her to bring her abilities out into the world and allow herself to bring them out, I should say, and not just operate, in the closet.
Absolutely. And like, you know, I think with anybody with a 12th house, it's always going to be a mission to
Yeah.
try to break on through to the other side.
That's a good way
Um,
to look at it. Yeah.
yeah.
You
Evangeline
know,
did it though. She was, and she, going back to the ninth house again, we have Saturn in her
Saturn,
ninth,
the teacher.
in the natural house of Sagittarius. Like she really was a phenomenal teacher, and
Hmm.
she, you know, would explain, you know, people liked her too. Venus, right on her ascendant.
Yeah.
Like she was,
She was
she really,
sweet, right?
she
I would
was
think.
liked.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was liked. She does have Chiron there though on the first house too. Like so that um, you know, like there was some, you know, whenever somebody has Chiron on the first, like there is going to be, you really presents in the earlier years, but
Yeah.
you know, some sort of either physical limitation or confidence issue,
Hmm.
or you know, you have to kind of work through the wounded healer,
Yeah.
on your front door.
Yes. I read somewhere about the 12th house. This was many years ago, and it's so true. Think of like the planets in the 12th house, because when you have 12th house planets, the sun is, the sun is rising in the 12th house, right? So essentially, whatever's there struggles to see the light of day, but the purpose is to get it to see the light of day. And it takes time. It's not easy, it's not always comfortable, but eventually I always look at the 12th house as a blessing. I have such a different, just because of my own experiences, it's not easy, definitely not.
Yeah.
But it houses a lot of beauty if you allow it to work with you and for you instead of against you, because of course there's a shadow side. I mean, with all this Pisces in the 12th, she could have been, let's be real, she could have been an addict. She could have been somebody who just completely checked out and numbed her pain through life and didn't use any of her natural abilities for the greater good, right? She could have done that.
No, listen, you're totally right. Like that's the shadow side,
Yeah.
of all this Piscean energy. I could have been a great escape artist.
Yeah.
Somebody who just doesn't show up.
Right.
I think that's where her fixed placements kind of like her sun in Aquarius, like that fixed zone, her moon in Leo, like this kind of gives her a
Helped her.
stronger, kind of standing. But just to also add to, the things that you said about the 12th house, I think that could also be said about the eighth, that
Yes.
undercover,
Yes.
that. So anybody who's watching this, like to know if you do have strong placements in the 12th or the 8th, I think right off the bat, no matter what the signs are, you're going to naturally have some of these gifts, that you can tap into if you start to exercise
Yes.
them.
And also to trust them, knowing that hopefully you listened and heard something here today that made you say, oh, wow, I'm not losing my mind. This is true. I really can feel, presences of spirits, or I really can hear, whatever it is. And you, like Crystal was saying before, look to the sign that these planets fall in, right? Because you could have a Pisces moon in the eighth house, for example, which is super duper psychic. That's like psychic times,
It adds
12,
it
it
adds
adds
another
another layer. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's really important to understand your own birth chart. And I'm going to plug your book because I feel like everybody needs to read your book, Feed Your Moon, which is right on your coffee table. I see it. Such a great book. I think we're gonna have to have another conversation about the moon, because that's just like a whole.
She's my girl. I think she needs to be everybody's girl.
Yes, I agree. I always recommend your book because it's so packed with wisdom, and it's easy
Thank
to
you.
apply it. It's not, you don't,
Thank you.
you know your stuff, but at the same time, people can actually apply this to their everyday life. It's not astro mumbo jumbo that people can't understand. So even if you have no basic knowledge of astrology, you can still follow that book.
And there's so much benefit to just, kind of exploring your own birth chart, even as you said, like starting as a simplistic level. But for anybody tuning in today, like, I really want you to know that sometimes we feel that we have something, but like your astrology can help validate that. And
Yes.
I just want to share a quick story because
Sure.
when I grew up with my dad is an astrologer, but I didn't ever want to do that. I didn't see myself doing this as a profession. And when it came to time for me to like really kind of think about if I wanted to fall into this profession or not, I leaned into my astrology and I saw Uranus on the midheaven. I was like, you know what? I was born to do this. Like, stop fighting it. I think for anybody looking, to go into this field or to kind of see if do you have this, like your astrology can be validating to help you kind of see like, yeah, it's there. It's so reassuring, and it gives you a just kind of a confidence to know, like, even if I do find myself a little wild and crazy, like there's something to this.
Yes. I love that. And you know what else is awesome? What I find amazing is because the astrology chart is really the roadmap of your soul. It's the GPS of your soul. Okay.
Totally.
And just like a GPS can take us off track, this happens. And so your chart is there to say, hey, look, this is your energy. This is the language of your energy and of your soul. And you're not going to always be perfect, and you're not going to always follow the script or the plan, but you're not supposed to. And that's the point, because you're always going to get lessons or blessings. And a lot of times it's both when you go off
Yeah.
track. That's how you learn. But
Yeah.
the one thing that and I find this with myself and my clients, and I'm sure you do too, Crystal, our soul always knows what's up. And we can try to rationalize and we can think it's not, we're not going in the right direction. But we know deep down inside those quick visions and thoughts you get, oh, maybe I should go and take hairdressing, classes, or maybe I should go and read tarot. That's coming from your soul. That's something your
Yeah.
soul is telling you, hey, it's time. You're scheduled for this. So, but if we don't follow that, that's where we end up with that feeling of like soul sickness, where we know something's off. We don't know what it
Yeah.
is. We feel lost. We're usually off of the map,
Totally.
right?
And
We could talk about this for hours.
yeah, it's such it again, you and I know the benefits of astrology.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But again, I hope today everybody walks away with a little bit more knowledge about like just some things, planetary markers to look
Yeah.
at, and thinking about your own psychicness or your own intuitive abilities or Uranian abilities, however you want to describe them.
Yeah.
But Lisa, it has been a joy to connect with you today, talking
Likewise.
about a topic that we both really, enjoy and love observing in other
Yes.
people's charts. And thank you so much for taking the time. And
Yes, you too. You too.
I
This
hope
was great.
everybody enjoys, learning a little bit more. And we'll connect again soon.
Yeah, and you'll be able to see all of our links where you can follow us if you wanted to book a session or anything like that. We'll put them down in the description box. And also let us know, because I know we're both very busy, but we can try and maybe do something else again sometime soon. So let us know what you'd like to hear more about, because honestly, we could have done a whole hour on Pluto. There's so
Yeah.
much to say and show people how to really identify with their Pluto, or I don't know, there's just so much we can talk about. So if anybody would like to know more, just let us know. We'll try our best to come back and give something else.
Talk about the astro, so much astro out there in the world.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Lisa. It's been wonderful.
Yes, thank you. This was great. Take care, everybody.